Welcome to my podcast, Today's Dream, Tomorrow's Reality. My name is Vicki Poole, for those that you do not know me, and I'm a life coach, a health coach, a hypnotist at the Enlightened Peach. And this podcast is all about embracing our mosaic life. And some of you may ask, what is a mosaic life? Well, it's recognizing that all the pieces of our life, the good, the bad, the indifferent, have all come together to make us who we are. Change any one thing, and we are different people. With that in mind, I invite you to embrace your perceived imperfections. And notice I said perceived imperfections, and celebrate who you are. This podcast is unedited and raw, just like life. I will be your host, and I will have special guests from time to time. As a matter of fact, I have an amazing guest today. And if you have any ahas or questions, please leave a comment or a voice message. So now let's get started. So I'm going to go ahead and read this bio that April sent me, but April and I are friends. We've known each other for quite a while. And she writes, April Berry writes sweet, sassy, steamy stories, and I can attest to that. She is a lifelong resident of Georgia and loves the Braves. April loves her hubby, son, and daughter, along with her fur babies. Well, you didn't even mention the iguana or whatever you have, but you'll have to talk about that. She enjoys baking, sorry, reading anything with romance, binge watching shows, and the occasional margarita at her favorite Mexican restaurant, or a blue moon at the ballpark. You can find all of her books, links, and social medias at linktree / is that no, it's April Berry. Mm-hmm. So I'll be putting some of that out. And I'll get her to tell you a little bit more about all that. But this is my wonderful friend, April Berry, and I'm so excited to have her on here because I did ask her a while back. And she's been a writer for a little bit now. She has quite a few books out and is always writing something. But I just wanted to share, like I said, we've known each other for a long time. And as a matter of fact, I actually did hypnosis sessions with April. And we had gotten to know each other pretty well before that. But during these sessions, there were several things that come to mind now. And one of them is that she wasn't an author then in her mind. She was an author with her spirit and her talent, but she didn't have it in her mind yet. And that was one of the things she said, I just have this thing about putting this out there right now. And we worked on that. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. And yeah, we had done hypnosis for a while, actually. The weekly visits were fantastic. And it was probably the best therapy I've ever had.
Huh.
And yeah, listen, I tell people all the time, I'm like, if you're having a life problem, you need a hypnotist. So, but I had started writing and I was really enjoying myself. But then, I knew I wanted to publish. And when you're working on stuff like that, it's always one of the things you hear is it's best to start marketing yourself in advance of release, and then you hype up the book, and that's how you get readers, and that's how you get people to look at the books when they actually come out. So it's like you have to, pregame before everything really happens. But my problem is that I was stuck in this mindset that, well, I'm a writer, but I don't feel like I'm an author, like who am I to call myself an author? I don't have anything actually published. And at the time too, I knew that I wanted to go the indie route for various reasons. And if you want, we can circle back on that, but I don't want to take up too much time, going into that. But I was really stuck on this, that I didn't feel like that made me an author.
Mm.
So, we talked about that, because it just came up in conversation. We were not even really, we were getting ready to do a session, but we always, chit chat a little bit beforehand because, like you said, we're really good friends. And I had mentioned I was struggling with TikTok because I wasn't sure. Like I didn't even have my name as my TikTok handle. And some people had mentioned to me, you really need to have your name on there so that people know that that's your author name. But I kept going back and forth, like, just do I just put April Berry, or do I put like April Berry writer, or what? And I had some people say put April Berry author, and so that's kind of how we got into that conversation, and that led into, let's talk about that during our session, because that's just a block. That's just this block that you have because you're writing, you're going to put the books out. And I was like, I know. And, because I was still like talking myself out of it. So, and we ended up doing that session. And my homework after the session was to go change my social media handles to say author, to kind of put it out into the universe and, have it in writing and have it where I could see it too. And of course, during the session, we went through, envisioning what I thought what I wanted it to look like, and try to kind of really see myself in that light. And you really kind of drove home, like, you're doing the work. You are an author, even though you don't feel like one. And so we talked about that, and I went and I did my homework, and I remember texting you like, okay, I just did it. So, and I mean, I had to really hype myself up too. I mean, I was in the car because I was like, I just have to do it. Like, if I don't do it now, I'm gonna I'm just gonna talk myself out of it. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go change it. And I did. So I was like, I gotta tell Vicky. So but I mean, and it felt, and I told you, I was like, oh my God, that was crazy. But like, and you said, well, how do you feel now? And I was like, it feels good. I was like, I'm really, like, it was scary, but it feels good. It's like, I kind of ripped the band-aid off. So, and that was one of the, that wasn't the most like crazy moment that I think I've had, but that was one of the pivotal moments that I really started to believe, like, maybe I am. So, I don't know, like, I needed to talk
You,
myself into
you
it, I
needed a
guess.
little push. They needed a little
Yeah.
push. Yeah.
So,
So, what have been other things that have helped you to see yourself as not only a writer but an author? And I know I was saying writer before, but I guess author is the better word for what you were going through. So, what are some other things? So, like, if somebody is listening to this podcast or watching on YouTube, and they're kind of a little like you were, where they're just a little bit scared of, I've got all these stories in me. How do I get them out? Why do I think why do I think I'm an author? I don't have anything out there yet. And so how can you maybe address that a little bit?
I think a lot of it was just, I had people, like, I had you, that kind of helped me through, and not just with sessions, but just, in general. And try, like, you questioned me a lot, even outside of sessions, just when we were having our chats, like, why do you feel like you can't do this? Usually, like, you're the type of person, like, if you want to do something, you just go do it. So, um, but in my mind, it seemed like this, um, like a crazy dream, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And my husband was pretty supportive too. And like, that was what started it all. Is I had this aha moment where, because, I didn't start writing until I was in my late 30s. Well, take that back. I'd always been writing. I've been writing since I was a child, but, and I even started some books when I was in like my really early 20s, and I never finished them. And then, I got the whole idea that, this isn't a career in my head.
Mm.
You need to get a job and take care of your family and take care of business and all of that stuff. So, um, and it was more looked at like kind of a hobby.
Right.
And so I was like, whatever. And I let life control me and put it to the side. And I didn't really think about it for a really long time. And then there were always moments where you're always like the coulda, woulda, shoulda, and
Yeah.
but then you're like, well, no, it's probably best that I just let that crazy dream go. And then when COVID hit, I and like if somebody's watching and they love this, if they love the books, I apologize, but I had never heard of Outlander, and we were binge watching a lot of shows, and we had watched Game of Thrones at the urging of everybody on the planet because we had never watched it. And
I
then
still haven't seen it.
I mean, it's intense, just so you
Yeah.
know. Like we
That's why
watched,
I haven't.
but we didn't have anything else to do for a while. So, and everybody was like, "Oh, you gotta watch it." It was really interesting, and like I had never read those books either. But we ran through that show pretty fast because we were home, and then I went on Facebook or something, and I was like, okay, so we just binged watch Game of Thrones in like 2 weeks, and like we literally did nothing but watch this show because there was a lot of episodes. But I was like, we need something else now, like we're addicted to binge watching now. And so one of my other friends was like, watch Outlander, you're welcome. And I was like, it's something we have to watch together though. Like it's couple time. And she was like, there's fighting,
There's death.
there's some smexy scenes in
Yeah.
there. And they said there's actually a lot of history. And I was like, oh, history? Yes, because my husband is a history buff. But I was like, romance? Yes, give me all of that. So we binged watched that. And at the time, there was only like 5 seasons out, I think, but we binged watched it. And I then went down this rabbit hole. And I had the library app on my phone because the library was closed, but you could still use like the Libby and the Hoopla apps. So I did read the books after the fact. And then, because I realized then they were based off of these books written by Diana Gabaldon. Then I read the books, and then like I went down this other like YouTube rabbit hole and Google rabbit hole looking up Diana Gabaldon, who was the author. And I was watching one of her interviews, and I realized she was 36 when she had wrote Outlander. And I was like, oh my God. Like
It's not too late.
I was sitting right here where I am right now. But my husband was sitting next to me watching TV or something. And I went, and he was like, what? Oh my God. And I was like, Diana Gabaldon was 36. And he was like, who? Because he didn't go down the crazy rabbit hole like I did.
Yeah, yeah.
He enjoyed the show with me. That's kind of where it stops. And so I'm explaining this to him, and he was like, okay, congratulations that you found that. And he was like, and I was like, no, you don't understand. I was like, it's not too late. And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, I could write a book because I was 38 at the time. And he was like, okay. And I was like, no, I'm serious. And he was like, so am I, then do it. And I was like, well, I will. And so I like clicked out of the YouTube video or whatever, and I opened up a document and I just started typing some stuff, and the rest was history. So, but that's the thing. So I started writing, and I got like really obsessive about writing the story. And all it was is I was like, I didn't even really know what I was doing. And I didn't know what I was going to do with it at the time because I didn't even start looking into like publishing routes and marketing and all of that stuff. I was just like, I'm going to write a book. Like that's started as I'm going to write a book, period. I'm not too old. I'm going to do this. So I wrote the book, and it's and that's what I always tell people now. Like people are always like, what's some advice that you would give to a new writer? And I'm like, write the book that you want to read. Just write it for you. You don't have a contract. You don't have anybody controlling anything. Just write the book that you want to read, write the story that you want to write, and don't worry about everything else just yet. Because even though like I mean all books have an audience no matter what kind of book it is, the fact that the key thing is just finding those people. But if you want to read this book and if you find this story interesting, chances are somebody else is out there looking for this book to read. um and it's not going to be perfect, and you don't worry about the editing and the grammar and the spelling and all that stuff. Like my rough drafts are rough. So and they still are, but that's why we edit, and that's why we get other people to look at it for us so that we can clean it up and make it actually readable to everybody else. But it was this really fun thing that I did. And then it became scary though when I just, because like I knew I wanted to put it out there, but it's a scary thing because you literally, it's this fictional thing that you make up in your brain, and you're like, were people going to think that I'm crazy, and even if they don't think you're crazy, you're like, what if everybody hates it, because
Mm-hmm.
um it's the inner workings of your mind on paper for everybody to judge. And so it's very nerve-wracking sometimes. And even now, like every time I have a new release, I still get really nervous. And I don't read my reviews for that reason. That's
Mm-hmm.
also a really good piece of advice. Don't read your reviews. Like you'll want to, but don't do it. Even because even the good ones sometimes, if somebody makes a comment about a character that like they interpreted it a different way than you meant, even though they loved it, like you're kind of like, well, how did I mess that up? Um,
Yeah.
so I just don't read them at all. Reviews are really for other readers anyway. But yeah, so it was just this crazy, weird chain of events that happened and later in life. And that is my favorite thing to tell about the story is like I was 38 when I started writing, and I was 39 when I published the first one, I think. And ever since, it's like potato chips, like you can't just have one. Like once you've
Yeah.
done it once or twice, it really it can become very addicting, I think, because it's like, you go to your little mind palace and you can escape everything around you, and do make up this whole little world and this whole little series of events and stuff. And especially when you start to get readers and people like it and they're tagging you on social media and holding up your book, it's a little bit of a dopamine rush for sure. So yeah,
Yeah.
it can get a little addicting, which also, I mean, it can consume you sometimes, so you have to really learn how to balance that out a little bit,
Right.
because you chase that feeling, you know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm. Well,
yeah.
I've seen people on TikTok with your book and talking about it and putting you in the side by side and all that stuff. So, you want to talk a little bit about your TikTok, especially because that's where you do most of your marketing, so to speak, right?
I do. And it's just like I had my Facebook page. And I mean, I'm an elder millennial, so of course Facebook was kind of my jam. And I have Instagram too, but Instagram is hard for me because I'm not very I'm just not really good with like tech and stuff. And I can't make like the pretty pictures, and like I am not a Pinterest gal. And Instagram is full of it's very beautiful curated pictures. That's what Instagram is. You're posting pictures usually. So I just haven't mastered eye-catching photos of things. So I find that one to be a little more intimidating for me. And when I finally got a TikTok account, um I really loved it because it was perfectly fine for me just to like put up a 60-second video, be in my normal hot self, hot mess self, and everybody liked it. Whereas I felt like on Instagram and Facebook, you post your pictures and you put like a little dialogue in there, and you're going back and you're editing everything, and you're like, does that sound stupid? And you second guess yourself and you're trying to make it perfect. But you get on TikTok and everybody's just like, oh my God, you're a normal person. And, I think it's easy to connect with people and they can really see you and your
It's easier to be
personality.
your authentic self there.
It really is. And it's cool because the way you can connect with people. And like you said, like people can duet you and stitch you. And so you can kind of piggyback off of other people's conversations. And um, I don't know, like it just has a totally different vibe to it. And I really do feel like you get a different level of connection and people they really get to know me, because I don't just, hold up my book and try to, sell them, but I get on the air and I talk about what I'm doing for the day. And, I have a lot of videos with my cat Ginger, and it's like this whole funny thing because he's like my stalker ex-boyfriend kind of cat, because he doesn't want me to love on him, but he always has to have eyes on me. He's like, he's sitting right over there right now watching me.
We've
So
got one of those.
he's not always he doesn't want to be right on me, but he's always right around the corner lurking,
Hmm.
But and then I talk about my kids, and like I have the son who does band, and that's like a whole job in itself. So and I talk a lot about my writing process, and I share like little nuggets of where I'm at and what I'm doing. And, I talk about like, I won't divulge any information about the books until I'm done, but I'll be like, oh my gosh, I wrote the most intense scene, and I made myself cry a little bit, So, and people love that because they want to be part of the process, even though they're not the creator. Like I feel like the readers really love to feel like they're on that journey with you, sort of,
Hmm.
and I love that,
Yeah.
because that's the thing. Like, I wrote that first one just to see if I could do it, really. But then once you start to get readers and you realize that people enjoy it, it is like you start to write for them, um, because it's like, you're an entertainer,
Right.
and so you're like, okay, I got to give the people what they want. So, and so when you can take them along for the ride, I think it's really cool for both parties.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen quite a lot of your videos. For a while I haven't had TikTok, and I've got all kinds of reasons for that, and none of them to do with TikTok itself. But but so I haven't seen any lately, but I'm about to download it onto this new phone, and that's an indicator there. It's the new phone. Is why I didn't have TikTok. But I
Yeah.
can't wait to get on there and get kind of caught up on some of your stuff. So one of the things that you had said that just kind of something come up in my head was, you said your writing process, that you share things with them. And I will say, I've seen, some people talk about the writing process, and they talk about how they have this board up with the characters, and they have all these different things. And I think, if I remember correctly, that is not how you do yours.
Yeah, I envy those people
Yeah.
so much. I'm like, my gosh, your whole life must be so organized, and I'm like a chaos goblin over here. And I learned, and I actually, that's funny because when I first started writing, I did try to talk myself out of it for a hot minute, because I did try to do like a rough little outline or a plot. And when I started writing, the story went completely sideways, and it was nothing like the plot that I had put out. And so in my mind, I was like, I can't even follow my own plot. Like, I suck at this. This is terrible. Who do I think? Why did I think I could do this? Like, see, there's a reason why I quit doing. So it was
Hmm.
this moment of doubt where I was like, I can't even follow my own directions. And then I am also very spiteful, even against myself. So I was like, no, I am not going to quit. I've already started. I can do this. And then, so I started doing it again. And then as I got through it, I didn't really talk about it too much on social media, but I started following authors, especially on TikTok. And I learned that there's such things as pantsers and discovery writers. And basically what those are is, you got plotters who they have their character sheets or their character boards, and they plot out, the book. And even plotters, some of them plot every little chapter out. Some of them do like beginning, middle, end, but leave it kind of where they can fill in the blanks. So it's kind of all over the place, even for plotters. But you have pantsers, which means you just sit down and start writing. And you might kind of have an idea in your head, and you might make a few like character notes and stuff just so you remember who's got blue eyes and
Yeah.
who
What does
wears
that
the
person look
crisp
like?
cologne, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you generally don't have any kind of outline. And then discovery writer is where I come in, and you have nothing. There's no notes. You just sit down. You don't even know where the story's going. You barely know where like the first couple lines, but you have this weird idea brewing, and it doesn't even really start coming to you until you start putting your fingers on the keyboards. And then all of a sudden, like the magic just kind of starts to happen. So when I realized there were actually like other people out there who did this, they wrote this way, and they're successful authors, you know, and I was like, oh my God, okay, so I'm not terrible. Like that's just not how my brain works.
Hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with it, you know? So it was really neat. And that's why, and another reason I really love TikTok, because there's so many people on there that, I mean, these same people are on other social media, but it's just the way the content is delivered, it just provides so much more insight into things. And people were very giving on that app as far as talking about stuff like that, and thank gosh for them, because like then I realized, you know, I'm not alone. I'm not doing this wrong. I'm just doing it the best way for me. And like
Hmm.
I felt like it kind of gave me permission to continue on that way. And so now like I'm a big advocate of, you know, if you can plot, that's awesome. But you know, if you can't, then don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And like I, every once in a while, you'll see some gatekeeping where people are like, if you don't plot, you're not doing it right, and you should really try. You're not trying hard enough. And I'm like, hey, you know what? Why don't you go fuck yourself? Like,
Yeah.
don't be on here telling people how to do it.
Yeah.
Like, are you
But
paying
don't
attention?
you find that that happens in just about everything, you
Everything.
know?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I wanted to point out is that um you were second guessing yourself because you weren't able to do this or weren't doing this in the way that other people were. And so many people let themselves get shut down from that. And then, especially the more they see other people spouting that this is how you do it, this is how you do it. And so they think that is the only way. And we're all individuals. And so just because, and you might even, somebody that's listening might even do it totally different than you do, or the other two examples you gave. And it's perfectly okay. Find what helps you get your voice out and do that thing to the best of your ability, and it'll become something. It's don't give up because the picture of what you're doing doesn't mirror the picture of what other people are telling you to do.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing, is learning how to filter out that kind of advice, you know,
Mm-hmm.
realizing just because somebody can talk on the internet doesn't necessarily mean they know what they're talking about.
Right.
And usually the people who speak with their whole chest and act like it's the end all be all, like if they have no flexibility, those are the people you want to run away from.
Right.
Um, because I think at the end of the day, especially writing is art, and it's a creative process. So not one painter necessarily does things the same way as the other painter, and you never see people going, well, they're doing it wrong because they're not
Yeah.
doing it my way, you know.
That's
So I'm
right.
like, why
Well,
why
some of
do
them might, you
people?
never know.
Well, yeah, you know, I'm not in those circles, but there could be. I'm sure there's some people, you know, that
Yes.
there's there's those pompous people and everything probably, but you
Yeah.
know, so I just don't ever see that. But you know, that's the thing, like this, it's a creative process,
Yeah.
and so you have to find what works for you, and tune out those people. The key thing is, though, you do want to listen to seasoned folks and, you know, take little nuggets from people. So that's kind of where you have to learn, like, okay, who do I need to filter and who should I really pay attention to? And what I always say is, so now the first thing I do is if I see somebody on the internet saying something, I go see, do they have any books published? And that, like, obviously this is very specific to books, but
Mm-hmm.
I'll go look to see if they have books published, what the books are about, and how long the book's been out and how many reviews they have, because that'll give you an indication of their sales. And usually the people who are um, very quick to say, like, this is the only way or this is the right way. Usually they don't have anything to back it up.
And a lot of times they're trying to sell the program that teaches you how to do it their right way.
Yeah. Or, I mean, and even like the thing about social media nowadays is everything is very follower driven, and you can monetize social media platforms if you have enough followers. So even if they're just trying to, um, they might just be trying to gain a bunch of followers. They're not even selling a book, but I have seen a few people where they're selling, programs, they're selling books, they're selling, just whatever. Because, and I'm like, well, how do you know? Like, what do you have to show for this? And the thing is there's plenty of people on there, especially like, newer authors. They'll come on and they talk about what they're doing and they share what they're doing. And me, like, if somebody asks me, I'll tell you what I do, but I will never get on the internet and start telling you how to do things. I
Right.
think, and that's the big difference is there's nothing wrong with sharing what you're doing and talking about what works for you. But I think it's really important to learn to listen to the way people are giving their advice, because there are people who are very successful who just started out, but the most successful people realize that not everybody's going to do it the same way, and you have to be flexible because just like everything else, this kind of the book market changes constantly. So there's not really a one right way for any of it, whether it's your covers, your editing, your marketing, the book itself. There's just so many variables. So that's why I say, like, pretty much listen to everything, take everything with a grain of salt, and pick and choose what works for you or what really strikes a nerve with you. But the people who are very like steadfast and like, this is the way you do it and this is the only right way, those people run away. Just run away. Like, don't engage with them either, because that's exactly what they want. But and like, we actually, my friends and I got together and we started a Discord for writers. It's called the Romance Riot, but we have all kinds of authors in there. You don't have to write romance books. We encourage it. We always try to get everybody to come over to our side. But even we're like, just put a little bit of romance in there. Like,
Yeah,
you're not
yeah.
gonna have to write the whole thing. But we made that because we wanted a safe place to share ideas, ask questions, and but we're not on social media, because the one thing I will say about social media is you can't really be marketing books and giving writing advice at the same time, because algorithms will pick one, and usually it's not going to be the one that's going to make you money. So
I didn't have a clue about that.
so that's the thing. If like I've seen where there'll be authors that talk a lot about writing and the process and giving advice and stuff, and then when it comes time to actually market their book, they are not capturing readers. They're only being shown to other authors, which authors should be readers. But like, I mean, I know I don't get to read as much as I'd like to. I can only read a couple of books a month because I work and I'm also writing. So, and I don't like to read while I'm drafting my own story because I don't want somebody else's voice to bleed into my books.
Right.
Um, because I'm very impressionable. Like, so, and that's just something I know about myself. Like, all of my favorite books, if I tried to read them at the same time I was writing, yeah, they would sound all like my favorite authors.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and that's just another thing, like, you have to find what works for you. But so when you're only ever talking to other authors and not really talking to readers, it becomes a problem when you're trying to sell your books. And I mean, I love sharing my books, but at the end of the day, like, the end goal is like to sell enough books to be able to quit working and just write all the time and, go to Braves games whenever I want to.
That's right. Well, you're getting there. You're getting there.
Yeah.
So, how many books do you have out right now?
That's an excellent question. It's somewhere in the ballpark of 12 to 14, but I don't even know
And you
for
got
sure.
some that are joint ventures with other people, right?
Yeah. Well, so all the anthologies that I was participating in have recently come down. When you do anthologies, they're usually like a 90-day run.
Okay.
I do have a secret project that I am working on that probably, I think we're trying to have it ready in January for publication, but um, that's still, I feel like January. I'm not 100% certain there, but again, it's
Doesn't
still,
it feel good to say you've got a secret project?
and it's so crazy too. Like I said, I'm gosh, it's so hard not to ruin this, but it's so cool because somebody asked me if I wanted to participate in this. And this person is somebody that I look up to. And she was one of the first people that I really started following. And I had found her books and I was like, oh my God, I love her writing. It's so cool. And it's like, it's simple, but so descriptive. Like, so it's really easy read, but you feel like you're there. And I just really loved all of them. And I didn't really know who she was because, like I said, I hadn't been doing this. Like, I later in life, I decided I was going to write books and just see what happened. And I stumbled, like, of course, I read a few of the books and I found her on TikTok. And then one day on Facebook, I was like, I should look her up there because I hadn't really done a whole lot with my Facebook page, but I was like, when I started to really ramp up, I was like, I need to be better about all of these social medias, start my newsletter, all of that stuff. And I went to Facebook to find her. And this woman has like 200,000 followers. And I was like, oh my God, you've been letting me talk to you like a normal person. And she was like, I am a normal person. What are you talking about? And I was like, no, you're not. No, you're not. I don't care what you say. I was like, holy crap. I was like, how did I not realize that you were like a big damn deal? You know, and she's like, stop being weird. She, you know, she gets to her, she was like, I am a normal person. I was like, no, you're not. And then so then enter new rabbit hole. And so like I did a deep dive on her and she's very renowned author, especially in romance. And she is the coolest lady and very down to earth. But yeah, so we have a little secret project we're working on with several authors, and it was just weird to get to this place, especially after only just a couple of years. Like, my debut will have its second birthday in August, you know?
Ah,
So,
so when we did your when you did your book signing that I went to, how long ago has that been? Because it seems like it's been a long time on one
it's been like
hand.
a year and a half because
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't do it pre-launch because, you know, leave it to me to do everything backwards. But
I know
so
your way, not backwards.
I had I still was so nervous about that first book that I didn't tell anybody. Like I did no marketing. I had talked about it some, but I never told anybody that there was a pre-order up or anything. And then once the pre-order went live and I got my physical copy, I did like opened the package on TikTok and I was like, hey guys, so like this book is available now. And I mean, it was just this really surreal moment, but I was like, you know what? I came this far and I actually did it. The book is live and I haven't even told anybody. So that it was the day after it went live is when my physical copy came. So that's when I told everybody about it. So it was weird. I had a few people, obviously, you know, friends and family picked it up, which that in itself is funny because I see a lot of jokes about romance authors being nervous for friends and family to read their books. But like my mom is the reason I don't use a pen name. She wanted to make sure her friends knew that it was really her daughter who wrote the books. So she wanted bragging rights, basically.
Yes, yes, yes.
So that's why I don't use a pen. And so you know, I had a few friends and family that picked it up, and of course, they all said they love it. But you know, your friends and family are going to tell you that you're like, I don't trust you at all. So, of course, you're going to say that. And then I got my first random stranger from the internet though, and she found me on TikTok, and she had done a review on Amazon and Goodreads, and then she commented or it was an Instagram post. She made an Instagram post and tagged me, and I was like, what is this? Oh my God. And I was like, who is this? And so I'm like, do I know them from somewhere? And like, because I was just certain that it was somebody that I knew, and it wasn't. And I like just boohooed over that. Like it was happy tears, but I was just like, oh my God, a stranger on the internet just gave me 5 stars. Like that's so crazy. And and I was so excited to get like those first 10 reviews, and so that first stranger was just crazy. And she still gets all of my books. She always gets a signed copy, and I know she's in my personal address book, because when she ordered signed copies, I was like, you are forever going down in history as my first stranger on the internet who read my book and liked it. So I just love her, and she's still just as excited about every release, and I love it. It's just crazy to think that, and then so it actually started catching traction a little bit, and then I got the idea for another book, and that was also interesting because I had actually started writing something else, went to see you. We were about to have another hypnosis session, and you were like, so tell me what's going on. And I was like, I hit a block in this story. I said it was going really well, and then I just no, it's not happening. I said, and then all of a sudden I have this other weird idea popped in my head, and I have these characters like yelling at me, and I don't know who they are or where they came from. The town is not the same town that I'm trying to write in. Like, I don't know what's happening. And you're the one who said, you were like, well, maybe you should just write this other book then. Like, maybe your brain is telling you, like, there's a reason that you're supposed to write this one and put this one to the side. And I was like, well, and again, this goes back to, and I told you this one was going to be book 2 of that series. And I was like, you're supposed to write the series and put them out in order. And that's what you do. And you were like, that's what who does? Like, who cares? And I was like, all right, maybe. so, so we had our session, and you talked to me during the session and kind of said, you need to follow the ideas that are coming to you. Do what feels good, do what feels right. The other stuff will come when the timing is right. And so I went home and I started working on this other book. And that other book turned out to be my most popular book I have written. And I wrote it faster than any other book I've ever written.
It was dying to get out, wasn't it?
It poured out of me. I wrote it in 3 weeks. Now that's not all the editing and everything, but like it's a decent sized book, and I read it in 3 weeks, and it was just like something, for whatever reason, my brain was like, you have to tell this story. And it's my most popular book now. Even now, everybody loves that one, and everybody's like, that needs to be a movie, so it's such a sweet, cute story too. But yeah, and then I did eventually go back to the second book of the series. It took me a while to finish it, but once I did, it felt right. And I actually ended up writing a couple of books in between before I went back to that one. And I feel like, looking back on it now, I don't do that to myself. Now it's like, if I get a different idea, and we'll talk, because that's actually a good point, because we were going to talk about the autumn car anyway, but I've given myself permission to follow the voices, like go where the inspiration takes me. And so I have different projects open all the time now. Like I might be working on 2 or 3 different books at a time, because I listen to the characters and the story that's happening, because those are the best stories that I write. There is such a thing called writing to market, and I envy those authors as well. And I think the more you write, the more comfortable you get, writing things that are popular without having to really think about it or try to write to market. It's just kind of a natural process the more you do it. But I can't do that. I can't sit down and say, these are the tropes that are hot right now, and these are what's selling, and this is what I'm going to write. There's a ton of writers and authors that they look at what's good what's selling, and they can sit down and write books that will sell, and that's what's writing to market. If I try to force that, it never turns out good. The stories are not good, you know? So it just, I think it takes a very practiced hand and a very patient person to be able to create these excellent books that are written on purpose. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Mine are all over the place because I don't write, like, I write the books that I want to read still. I write the stories that are screaming at me, the characters that are talking to me. And those are definitely the ones that, like, you can tell because there's been a couple of times that I was trying to push through, and I have readers that help me while I'm working on my books, and they can tell, like, you're not in this, like, you don't, like, your heart is not in this. They're not talking to you. You need to put this one off to the side. So I've given myself permission to just, write whatever is inspiring me, and it is what it is. And, not everybody in the industry will recommend that. And certainly, like, that can hinder success for people sometimes, just because, it is a business. So you do have to kind of learn how to balance, like, I want to write what I want to write, but I also have to, get the readers interested, because
Mm-hmm.
right now everybody's kind of chasing that thing over there. So it is a bit of a balance, but I think as long as you have your expectations set correctly, but still let yourself think, I still can be successful with this. I just have to figure out how I'm going to do it. Um, then you can still do it. You just, like I said, you have to be able to shift gears a little bit and um, just figure out how you're going to do the marketing piece if you want to write that way. If you can write to market, bless you, just bless you, and congratulations. Like, same thing with the plotters. Like, I wish, because I'm like, man, I could probably write so much faster if I could plot, but I just can't. So and I'm not going to force it, because, like I said, I couldn't stick to it, and all it does is make me feel bad about the process. So
Yes, make you feel like a failure in some ways because
yeah.
you've got this guideline set out there and you haven't met it. So it's like, well, obviously this is not what I need to be doing. Yeah, I
Yeah,
get that.
so I had to learn how to just give myself permission to do these things. And obviously, like I said before, like, I really do want to make enough money where I could just write. And I would love to be able to retire my husband too. But
Well, that's coming. That's coming.
but I also, like, because of the way I write and the way I publish, like, I have to understand that I'm gonna have to be a little more aggressive in my marketing and try a lot of different things in order to make that happen, so, and not expect to be a bestseller tomorrow. So
Right, right.
um
So would most people just look you up by April, is it April D Berry or April Berry?
I think you can just look up April Berry on
Okay.
Amazon.
Okay. Yeah. So definitely check out her books. And if they wanted to get a signed copy, did they order that in
So
there?
in my link tree, which you said you'll be putting on there,
Mm-hmm.
in my link tree, there's always a form in there for signed copies. I do have a website as well. That's aprildberry.com. So you can find all my books on there as well. And I'm working to get my signed copies integrated onto there to make it a little easier, but I do offer signed copies. And there's a form in my link tree for that too.
Yes.
And you can just message me on social media if, like, you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I always answer my messages. I love getting reader messages too. So I know people are always nervous. And I'm like, first of all, I'm a normal person. Don't be nervous about messaging me. And it literally makes my day when somebody messages me about my books, like, especially if it's good. And I've even had somebody message me where they wanted to gripe about something in one of my books, but I was like, so what you're saying is you read it though. Like, like, you still bought it though, right? So, like, thank you. So, because, like, every book's not for everybody, just like
Yeah.
everybody's not for everybody. So,
Yeah.
uh,
And technically I'm not a romance person as far as reading romance novels. And I used to try years and years ago when I had a friend that's all she read. And I would read them and I'd think, oh, I hate this. But I can say when, I was trying to support you as a friend when I bought that first book, but the other books that I've bought since then were because I just really like the way you write. I like the story. I like where it goes. And it's to me, um, the romance novels that I read years ago are so different from what you do. Now, I haven't branched out and read any other romance novels. I've just
I
stuck
can
with
recommend
yours. Do what?
I said I can recommend some great ones. There's honestly such a big variety, and like it just kind of depends on what you enjoy. Because there's something for everybody out there, even within the romance genre. There's still so many differences. Um, but yeah.
Yeah. And so we had mentioned just earlier when you and I were talking before we got on here that we were going to mention your series, the Anna.
Oh, the Anam Cara. Oh, and yeah,
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
mentioned that, and I was like, "Ooh, we're going to talk about it in a minute." So, because I was talking about, following the inspiration and following the voices, but so I actually the first book that I wrote was the Anam Cara, but it wasn't the first book that I published. That
Right.
one is so close to my heart, and I worked on that one longer than the rest of them, obviously, and I I don't know, like I was really struggling with publishing that one because I was like, I love this story, but
This
nobody
is
else.
my baby.
Yeah, and I was like, what if somebody says something bad about it, you know? And I worked on it a lot and I kept trying to edit and edit more. And that's when I was like, okay, I've come this far. I started saying that I was writing a book. I can't just quit now. I was like, I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to put this one to the side. And that's when I wrote Served. Because I was reading a ton of contemporary romance at the time. So I was like, these are really fun, easy reads. Like I love reading contemporary romance too. So I was like, let me just try my hand at this and see what happens. And I actually enjoyed the story. So I was like, I think I'm going to go with this one. The editing went a little bit easier for me. And at the end of the day, like I was not as emotionally attached to it then as I was the Anam Cara. So I published it first and people were receptive to it and it ended up doing really well. And I still love it. And like I have my little served cup and it was my debut. And that one is like my second best selling book. Everybody loves it. They follow the series through. They love the characters. People always enjoy when I have a new one coming out. So
I do
um,
too.
so I really I have found this new love for that particular book. I still think the Autumn Car is probably my favorite just because seriously it was like the first one. It really just like this weird
and
story
it and
poured
it's
out of
in
my
a
heart.
like the setting of that one, it feels so different from the setting of these others that you
Which
have.
is so
So
funny though, because they're both kind of small towns.
mm-hmm.
And they both are kind of set in like a square of a small town, but the vibes are totally different. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I love that story so much. But the thing is so it doesn't end on a cliffhanger. It's called a lead-in. So I don't want anybody to not check it out because of that. But and this is like this huge debate because I have a lot of people, the handful of people that actually have read that book really love it. Like, and I have people constantly asking me when the second book's coming out. And I think part of me, like, I have this weird block because I love that story so much that I'm scared to make it end, first of all. Um, and I do this when I'm writing my standalone books, even when I get to like the last 2/3 of the book, I slow down and sometimes I get writer's block and I'll start another book because I don't want it to end. Like I know
Mm-hmm.
if I finish it, then it's over and I have to say goodbye to these people. And it really makes me sad.
Well, as a reader, I do the same thing with books that I'm reading. And if I'm really into it and everything, it's like I feel compelled to read fast so I know what happens, but then I want to slow down so I can make it last
And then you're
longer.
like, oh my God, I've only got like this many pages left. I gotta,
Yes, yes. So
I have done that too.
I've had times in my life that I've looked for authors that had like 20 books that were all the like a series, you know. I think I want to do that one because I know it'll keep going.
But I think that's kind of my block with that one because it's like so close to my heart. I love it so much. And I'm like, I don't want it to be over. And it's only going to be 2 books, so it'll be a duet. And on top of that, I'm like, can I do it justice? Because I love the first one so much. And it's like, can I do it? Can I do that again? You know? And that's something that a lot of authors I've learned deal with is not necessarily um just a lot of people it's that second book, like even they get because you get all fired up about your first book and your debut and everything, and then all of a sudden though you're like, people like this, oh my god, though what if I can't do it again is good. So it's what do they call it, like the sophomore, it's some kind of sophomore blues or something like that because you're concerned that you can't match that same excitement for another one,
Mm.
you know.
Well, the
uh,
thing that popped in my head was one hit wonder. You know how you hear
exactly,
that all the time?
exactly. And these are things that we
Yeah.
really go through. And I mean, I understand it because, like I said, every time I put one out, I'm like, same thing, especially with my series. You're like, oh my gosh, okay, so they really loved book 1. What if they don't like book 2? And then you're like, oh my God, they love book 2. Like, what if they hate book 3? So it's like this never ending thing. So, but and I think that's why I keep having a block. And I actually started writing book 2 of the Anam Cara, and again I got this weird block and I started writing something else because the characters were really yelling at me, and I had like a few scenes even that popped in my head when I was listening to some music one day. So I was like, okay, so this is the book that I need to work on right now, and I'm just going to put this one to the side. But I am excited to get back to that one, and I keep telling, I have a couple of friends that they're also writers, and we actually met back when I was getting ready to publish the Anam Cara, the first one. And they all love it so much. And they're like, if you put out another book before you write that, I'm going to drive down to Georgia, you know? So they're like, please just write the damn book. And I'm like, you're writers too. I can't even believe you're telling me that, because they know, and they
Mhm.
all have multiple projects open too, by the way. So yeah, I'm talking to you, Kate Prada. But so I'm hoping to get back to that one because I mean, like I kind of have an idea of where it's going to go, and like I've written the first chapter, and we actually, so we had done the hypnosis thing, and the thing about the first book is without spoiling too much, like there's some past life regression there. There's some reincarnation, and she's got a lot of dreams about these people and places and things that definitely she realizes, she thinks at first they're just dreams, but then over time she realizes these are things that have happened, but they were not in this time, and we were doing hypnosis sessions, and it kind of came up in conversation that you could do past life regression, and how cool would that be? And I was like, I need to do that for research, like, because that is something that I do want to touch on more in the second one, and that, I mean, a lot of writers do things like that where they'll learn a new thing just so they can successfully write about it, and
Right.
understand it at least. So I was like, yeah, I need to do that because that's going to be in the next story, and it ties in so much to the first story even, um and that was such like an intense experience, and like I remember I was crying while I was under. And you asked me, for a minute, I was like, no, I'm okay. But then finally I was like, no, I'm done. Like, I can't, like, this is really intense. I need to stop. So you walked me out of it, but it was definitely this wild experience, and it sat with me for a really long time. And I still think about it sometimes. And I have like little flashes even. And I think there's just something like, especially when you're creative, and then you unlock that part of your brain, you're just going to continue to see things like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so it was just crazy to go back and see. It was almost like scenes. It was like scenes of a book or scenes of a movie, if you will, I guess. And it wasn't necessarily like this whole linear thing playing out. It was like you have a little quick scene and then you switch and you're kind of somewhere else, you know. But it was a little overwhelming because of how, like, I don't like, is it okay to talk about the process? I don't know
Yeah,
if you're
sure.
okay. Because I think I told you this. I was like, I think I might be weird for me because I have this really insane fear of death. And all things death related make me like super uncomfortable. And that's how you do the past life regression though. You start from like you're going to your death and you're walking backwards almost to, you know, and then you go to this place where, you know, you go through a few little bits and pieces, but then you end up, you know, kind of at your deathbed or right there at the time of death. And um, you're walking through how did that happen? And you know, that's the thing. It's not like there's a big note on the wall and they're saying like, you know, this patient had this going on.
Yeah.
So you're looking around trying to figure out what are the people around you saying. Do you see anything laying around that might indicate what the problem is, or and how do you feel? And I remember feeling like very tight in my chest, and it was like that the whole way through. And so we were like, okay, so apparently like I have died before from some sort of probably like pneumonia or just some kind of like lung issues or breathing issues, you know. Which is funny because like I mean when like I've never been like diagnosed with asthma or anything, but every once in a while I get some weird breathing stuff. And especially like when the pollen is bad, like that's something that kicks up for me is I have a hard time breathing. And then with my anxiety, when it kicks up, that's the first thing that really hits me is it's very tight in the chest and hard to breathe, you know. And that's the thing now that I'm older and I understand that's what's happening to me. I realize this is an anxiety attack and it's going to be okay. And I have to like walk myself through it. But, you know, when you're younger and you don't know what that is, it's really scary sensation. So, and that's the thing though, I walked out of there. And so we didn't really get time to touch on everything and what exactly was going on. But it was though, I mean, and I wasn't, it was a weird feeling because I wasn't like scared and I wasn't necessarily like really sad. It was just very overwhelming feeling. Um,
Hmm.
Especially the last one that we went to. I actually, you know, it was sad. Everyone around me seemed to be kind of sad, but and that was the thing, like it was, you know, I knew it was about to end, and but I could feel the love of everybody around me. Um, so it was just a weird sensation. Like I don't even know how else to describe it, which is terrible because I'm telling you people that I'm a writer, but but
Well, when
it
you
was
write about it, you'll know all the nuances to say.
I tell you all the time, I'll be talking to my mom and I'll be trying to tell her something and she's like, what? And I'm like, never mind, you know, because it doesn't make any sense, but I can sit down and write a whole book, you know. So I guess like the writing
Yeah.
aspect of it is just a little bit easier for me. But I remember that sensation like of feeling really loved. And I knew that people around me were sad, but I wasn't it was like I knew that I was ready to go. But and I was sad that they were sad. So it was just kind of overwhelming though, being at that moment, you know, in a previous life and knowing that that was what's about to happen too. But just knowing that like obviously I did have people that loved me. So
And don't you feel
which
like that going through that process of that life and everything, it gives you some kind of insight of something that'll help you coming forward back into this life?
I mean, that's the thing. I have flashes of it all the time, and I try to kind of revisit it occasionally, like when I'm questioning things, especially. So, because we actually had gone, I know we did two times for sure. I'm trying to remember if we did three, but I know two. I remember two clear as day. And the first one was a little more depressing.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. They were very stark in contrast, to each other. And because one, I seemed to be like a very like desolate, poor person, and I didn't have a lot of family around. There was somebody else there with me, like a child, and I can't remember what I said at the time, but I mean, it was either like like a younger sibling or a younger child or something, and very just like dilapidated little shack that we were in, and I was dying, and so it was sad because I was worried about this other person with me and how were they going to take care of themselves, and just like the condition of everything was just sad. And then you go to the next one and it was more of like this grand manor, and it was very lovely and regal, and I was in this really beautiful bed that was ornate, and like I said, I had family around me, and people were they weren't mourning yet, but they were getting prepared to mourn. And so they were sad, but they were with me. And so it was like this really huge difference between the two. So I always sit there and try to figure out like, why were they so different, and so how can I tie that into now? And I always, and I still wonder, like, because like I really want to do it again sometime, but I don't know.
Well, we'll do it. We'll do it. It's a
Because
date.
I'm like, there has to be more. So it's like, me, I'm like, I need to know everything, because like I feel like I'm still missing pieces somewhere, because I'm like, how does everything tie together? So like I'm still always trying to figure out like what is the message between these two different things, because I feel like, you know, I don't know if I believe that like you're gonna be, um tortured or whatever in your next life for the things that you did bad in the last one, but I think that you do try to learn different lessons and do
Hmm.
things better, and be better,
Right.
and so that's kind of where everything, you're like, okay. And it also makes you wonder, like, okay, did I deserve that bad life that I had, or was that just some sort of test, to prepare me for the future, because like you don't, like, you could just keep over and over and over, and so
Yeah.
you don't know, like how many times have I been here, you know what I mean? So
Yep.
um, and it's just such a crazy and amazing thing to think about and really like wrap your head around, like that happened, like that was, and who knows exactly how long ago it was. And I know that we walked around, like I was walking around trying to look for things, but
Yeah, I remember you being able to find some dates and things like
there were
that
a
because I
couple
don't
of
have my
little
notes in
things,
front of me, so I don't remember right on top of my head.
there were a couple of things that we found, but it still was really difficult to really like lock anything in after the fact, because I did some Googling and stuff, but I could never really like tie everything together. So that's why I think too, like there had to have been more that I
Hmm.
missed out on, or something like that I didn't see. Um, but and so like I think about doing it again all the time, but I'm like, well, one, am I mentally prepared for that? And two, like, when am I going to be able to do that? So
Well,
and because
well,
I will
we'll
say,
find time, I'll tell you. And the thing is when you go back, it'll probably be a different life. It'll be, you just have to have it in your mind, the one that's going to give me the most benefit to know right now, and then you go to that one. And so it's just like an open vessel, of where you go. So now you are in the process of writing the book too, right? Or have
well,
you
I
already?
started it, but I'm working on something else right now, because just like I was saying before, when I hit a block, I don't stop writing. I just stop writing that one. And I follow the voices. So I'm working on something else right now, and it's coming along really well. And this one is a lot, it's different than the Anam Cara, but it's still it has a lot of like the paranormal elements like the Anam Cara does. So I feel like I might be in a better mindset to work on it when I'm done with this one. Um, and I've been revisiting my playlist because like I have certain songs that I listen to with every book, and that's how usually a lot of my stories come to my brain. Like I'll just be driving down the road and I'll hear a song and all of a sudden like I have this idea.
Well, if you haven't
Uh,
already, you should be giving everybody a playlist from your book.
I have it in some of them. I'm so bad about like putting them with all of them, but I'm trying. I have a couple on like Spotify, and I think I can share the links to them. I just have to
Okay.
go in there and do it. But I have because I have like served. I have is on there, and then I want to say I had the Autumn car in there. I'm not
So
100%
you've
sure,
got
but I
it on Spotify?
know
Okay. Well, I'll have to look it
because
up because I didn't know that.
because some of them like I listen to YouTube music and sometimes like I'll hear like I don't necessarily look for songs. Like I wait until a song hits me like, oh, that is great for this book, you know? And so I'll go listen to it a million times. And I listen to it a bunch while I'm writing. And then so I just keep adding to them. So I might listen to the same song halfway through the book, you know, as I'm writing it. So my playlists are not like per chapter or per event, where I have some friends who they really drill it down. Like you could put that playlist on and read the book and it like goes with the
Oh,
vibe of the
wow.
book.
That's
You know,
impressive.
and I'm like, y'all are like my heroes because I
Yeah.
can't do that, you know, but I'm like, I give you a few songs that give me the overall vibe. And if you get them in order, you're doing great because I usually just throw them in there, like when I think about them. But and even like I'll listen to it again while I'm editing just to kind of stay in the mindset of that story. But yeah, I need to be better about working on that for sure. But I mean, like I said, I am very chaotic with all of this stuff. So I have like the first year I was writing, I put out a ton of books and people were like, oh my God, like how do you write so fast? And I was like, because I literally don't do anything else except write books. So I like at the end of last year, I finally slowed down and then started to focus a little bit more on marketing and the business side and kind of started working. I had a website forever and I just never really did anything with it. And so I finally got my website semi organized and things like that. But so this last like 6 months, 6 to 9 months now, I've tried to focus a little bit more on the business side of things, but I continue to write. It's just been a little bit slower. And then, like I said, with work, it definitely slows it down. But you know, I still am managing to get some done. And once I get to a certain point in the story, like the one I'm writing right now, like things are getting deep. So now like my brain wants to know what's going to happen next. So I'm more motivated to get the words out. So I've been writing a lot after work the last like couple weeks, but like today was, like I said, it was like the Mondayest Tuesday ever. And then like I had to cook dinner and get ready to do this. So I was like, yeah, I'm probably not going to write anything tonight. And that was the thing. I was like, I am not going to kill myself over it. Like it's fine, it's cool, no worries, you know.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, I will say, I know you're my friend and everything, but one of the main reasons I wanted to get you on the podcast is because to me, you're amazing. And it is, one of the things that I talk a lot about to people in this podcast, and I created it because I have written some. I have like I don't know how many notebooks with different stories and stuff in there, and I haven't really done anything with them. And I'll put them all away for a while and then I'll pull them back out. And so you're an inspiration to me to get the stuff out and actually play with it a little bit and make it fun. But the biggest thing is that to me, the journey that you have taken in this process has just been mind-boggling to me, because when we were first talking about things and you were excited about doing this, but you were petrified about doing this, and
very
all
timid,
the
yeah.
things that have transpired to now there's this author that has got all these books out and you've got followers. And so it's just amazing to me. But one of the things I want to ask, just thinking about your life and even before you were writing or anything, so is there one thing that you would want to give to our audience that might be some kind of inspirational thing that if they're in the same place that you were, back then, with their business or with their writing or their art or music or whatever it may be, that they're just kind of almost like constricted and not able to do anything, what's the one thing that you would want to give them to maybe help them come out of that?
Do it afraid. And it's never too late. That's the biggest thing. It's never too late. Um, it might not be easy, but it's never too late. Um, and like I can't speak to everything, but I can say as far as writing goes, like there's no one right way. There's not a timeline, especially when it's your first book. Don't get hung up on, publishing and contracts and everything else. Just write for yourself. See if you just finish it. Just finish it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be perfect. Like let yourself write this book with all the mistakes and don't care if anybody else is ever going to like it. Just write it to say that you did it.
Mm-hmm.
Once you're done with it, then you can figure out everything else from there. But I would say just the never too late thing, because I really had talked myself out of it for such a long time, for the better part of my life, my adult life anyway. And I just had this moment where I was like, it's not too late, and it took me seeing another, like a very successful person, um, realizing that they did something later in life and it worked out. And then, when you start to really think about it, there's a ton of people who worked on something later in life and became successful, like Morgan Freeman. Okay, everybody knows who Morgan Freeman is. And he was like in his 50s before he started acting, and look at him now. Like everybody knows who he is.
Yeah. Well, when
I
you
think
say later
Samuel L.
in life,
Jackson, same way. Yeah.
who?
Samuel L. Jackson also, I
Okay.
think, was a little bit older when he started. And they're actors, but I mean, there's examples in so many industries where there were people who just they weren't in their early 20s, doing these phenomenal things. But, and I even think back now, I said, I think that life stood in my way for a reason. Like I would suggest, like if you're in your 20s and you want to write the book. Don't wait. But if you let that time pass you by, don't worry too much about the time that you pass by, but look at it more like now you have all this life experience and you've probably had a gamut of emotions because you've lived all these different experiences. And I think that probably made me a better writer than I would have been when I was 20 years old.
Yeah.
So,
Well, see,
I really feel like
this is a great push for me because I'm not in my 30s. I'm 63 and I've still got
which I
dozens of
still feel like
books.
is a lie. Like, look at you. How? That's a lie. I need to
So
fix my
I
IT.
still have all these notebooks with all these books that have started, and and I haven't done anything with them. So my goal now is for by this weekend, to pull out some of those notebooks and revisit them and decide which one I'm going to work with. So you can hold me accountable to that. So,
Oh, I'll ask you about it now.
but I
Like
can't do it till the
so.
weekend. I got too many things going on.
Listen,
So
listen,
yeah,
that
yeah,
I
yeah.
completely understand that for sure. Oh my goodness.
Well, this has been such an amazing pleasure as always when I get to speak to you,
I
but it was definitely a pleasure to share you with my listeners. And so I am very, very grateful for you taking the time tonight and sharing your vulnerability when it comes to all of this stuff, because it was definitely wonderful. And I think there'll be so many people that'll get a piece of inspiration and maybe go ahead and push themselves into a place of action.
just do it. Just do it. Yeah,
That's
just
right. That's right.
yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I love hanging out with you, even if it's on a Zoom.
I
So
know. I know. We'll be getting together in person pretty soon, I'm sure.
I hope so. I miss you. But
Yes.
yeah, thanks for having on. And yeah, just like I said, my messages are open, even if like if you don't care about romance books, but you have questions about writing and stuff, like I'm happy to help with what I can offer. Like I said, I don't really do advice, but I can share with you some things that I've done, and maybe point you in the right direction for some resources that could be helpful too, because like anybody can do it. I really think that everybody has a story in them. It's just a matter of whether they're going to do it or not. So,
Yes.
I will bully you into chasing the dream if you tell me that you want to do it though. So be careful what you wish for.
Well, thank you again, April, and everybody that's listening. I'm so glad you're here, and make sure to stay tuned for our next week episode. Thank you.